absolutely the money is key. And I mean, politics is very cruel. It's cruel in the UK, and it's even crueler here. And it does come down to sound bites. So Biden can deliver an hour-long rally. He can hold an hour-long press conference with Zelensky, and as you say, discuss the intricacies of the Ukrainian war in a way that some may question if Donald Trump could do the same.
Anthony Blair is the US Sun's senior reporter. Good afternoon to you, Anthony.
Good afternoon.
Well, just bring us up to date on the latest on Joe Biden. A pretty defiant message that we heard there. Is he going to be able to stay in the race?
Well, as you just heard, I mean, he did give a storming performance at last night's rally in Detroit, in Michigan, which is another key swing state for the Democrats. And it kind of follows on from another strong rally that he gave in North Carolina last week. And there is this sense that it marks a stark contrast between the way that he can speak in front of a crowd and some of these sort of more intimate one-on-one instances where we've seen these recent gaffes, such as the debate with Donald Trump, and as you've mentioned, referring to Ukrainian President Zelensky as Vladimir Putin, and referring to his own Vice President Kamala Harris as VP Donald Trump. So there is a sense that he can turn it on still, and he is still a good speaker, and a sort of and seems to be very defiant that he is staying in the race, but. As these decisions are maybe made behind the scenes in terms of withdrawing funding for the Democrats, or at least keeping it on hold until he makes a decision. And until this issue is kind of resolved fully, the questions will only continue. And with the DNC now just a month away, I think most senior Democrats are desperate for this issue to be resolved once and for all, long before that time.
Yeah, because I watched that whole news conference that Joe Biden gave at the NATO summit. And for a lot of it, he was very coherent, very on top of all kinds of details about Israel, Gaza, about the US economy, and so on. But of course, what many people, including voters across the US, will have seen is those mistakes which you've just described. Do you think this question of the donors now starting to withhold their funding could be a critical factor in perhaps getting more Democrats to put their heads above the parapet and openly call for him to go?
I think absolutely the money is key. And I mean, politics is very cruel. It's cruel in the UK, and it's even crueler here. And it does come down to sound bites. So Biden can deliver an hour-long rally. He can hold an hour-long press conference with Zelensky, and as you say, discuss the intricacies of the Ukrainian war in a way that some may question if Donald Trump could do the same. But now that this narrative has really started of he is gaffe prone, and he is likely to mix up names and make mistakes and maybe show his age, it's going to be very hard for them to turn that narrative around. And I think what's been so interesting to note is that since the debate, we've barely heard anything from Donald Trump. He's essentially kept quiet, he's kept behind the scenes. And a lot of Republicans are maybe saying quietly, the less that Trump says, the more presidential he appears.
Yeah, and of course, for Donald Trump, in a way, it suits him to keep Joe Biden in as the rather, the his big rival, having all those questions and not even having the support of everyone in his own party. That suits Donald Trump, doesn't it? Who goes into his big party convention this week.
Absolutely. And there is a sense that the Republicans are maybe better at, getting behind their candidate and putting some of their grievances to the side while they sort of look to fight this race, while the Democrats are appearing increasingly divided. I mean, it's interesting. Biden today is holding no political events this entire weekend. He's going to be at home in Delaware. He's going to be speaking to a lot of key members of the party just over Zoom to try and shore up that support. But I also noted that a Democrat strategist has today described him as the underdog candidate. And there is maybe a sense that they will shift their campaign into turning it as, which is bizarre, really, for an incumbent president, but to run a campaign as the underdog and admit that the momentum has turned to Donald Trump, and they will have to fight on the defensive now. to secure the White House in November.
You talked about politics being a cruel business. I mean, and you compared it to here in the UK, but it took quite some time after that disastrous debate with Donald Trump for this issue to start to really gather pace. But it does now seem as though increasing numbers of figures within his party think that they would be better off with an alternative candidate. If Joe Biden really does dig in his heels, if he refuses to pull out, do you think they would dare to try to challenge him? Is there a way of trying to force him to stand aside?
It's very difficult to force him to stand aside. It really would have to come from him. And obviously, the DNC hasn't been an uncontested sort of convention for decades. So it will be, it will have to come from him. I mean, whether he's, it takes these senior Democrat statesmen like Obama to kind of, or even Clinton to maybe take him aside and say, like, for the good of the party, you have to step down. And, if you leave with dignity, you will, we have a chance to turn this around. And there's some kind of rumors that maybe Jill Biden has said that she doesn't want, this debate and, him crashing out of the campaign to be the legacy of this 50-year political career, remarkable career, the youngest ever senator when he was voted in at 29. But then a lot of Democrats would also say that if he is the president that handed the White House back to Donald Trump, he would never be forgiven, and that would forever tarnish his legacy.
Just finally, what about Kamala Harris, his deputy? A lot of focus on her. And there has been a sense in which her profile and her popularity might be gaining somewhat after quite a few months where she's been rather dismissed as a likely successor.
Yes, I mean she's kept very quiet, it seemed, for the last few months of the campaign, and then suddenly after the debate, these questions have suddenly reared their head. She interestingly, Trump is giving this huge rally in Pennsylvania this weekend, while in this crucial battleground state, and at the same time, Kamala Harris will be speaking at a rally in the same state in Philadelphia. So maybe there is a sense that she is starting to kind of, if not directly run against Biden, which she couldn't really do, she may be trying to at least, take on some of the mantle of president and at least present herself in this sort of stateswoman-like way as we reach these sort of crucial last weeks ahead of the DNC.
Anthony Blair from the US Sun. Really good to speak to you. Thanks so much for joining us.